Now.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, nice. Hi, everyone. Okay, so welcome again to the Municipal Elections Organizing meeting with our guest, Berry Vrbanovic. I also really want to acknowledge that we are, joining from all over Turtle Island today. Currently, I am in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded and surrendered territories of the Mi'kmaq people on the East Coast. But I'd like to invite you all to kind of take a moment and give your own personal land acknowledgement to wherever you may be, and kind of think about how, as we move forward in building a more sustainable world, how we can also bring along some of our relationships with Indigenous people of this land. So this is the basic kind of meeting agenda. We've kind of already introduced ourselves in the chat. I'm going to introduce Berry. We're going to have a lovely presentation from Berry, from Mayor Bervanovic, and we are then going to kind of have a bit of a discussion, and whether or not we're in breakout rooms or just all together, we'll see. And we're just going to discuss and have a bit of an organizing meeting about what we're all up to in the upcoming elections, as they are coming very soon. So who is Mayor Berry Vrbanovic? So Berry was elected as mayor of the city of Kitchener in 2014. He also is a climate reality trained leader by Mr. Al Gore, in addition to serving on all regular standing committees of the Kitchener City Council and Region of Waterloo Council. Berry is also an appointee and active participant on many boards and committees. He is the treasurer of the United Cities and Local Governments and president emeritus of the Canadian Federation of Municipalities, which is really big. If you don't know the FCM, we have royalty almost in the house today. And then in 2014, Berry ran for the elected office of mayor, and with an outpouring of community support was very successful. And he is now still mayor today and is committed to improving the quality of life for residents in Kitchener and throughout the region of Waterloo. So please give a warm welcome to our guest today. Take it away. Oh, here, I'll stop sharing my screen. Oops. This is why it's one second.
Are you good?
Yes, all good.
Here we go.
Go ahead. Yep.
Hey everyone. Thanks a million, Hope, and thanks everyone who's joining today. I know it's a really busy time for everyone, and it's a real pleasure to be able to be here with all of you. I'm just trying to. There we go. Are we good? Do you guys see what you need to see? Awesome. Good stuff. So, as I said, thanks, Hope, and it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today, and to acknowledge that here where I am at in the city of Kitchener is the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And as a community, we recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the lands and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community has been enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener and in Waterloo, throughout Waterloo region today. So I was absolutely thrilled when I was given an opportunity to join you today, because there's no better time to talk about some of the things that we've been doing as a city of Kitchener than during the time of a municipal election. Particularly, I know we're in election period in Ontario, we're in election period in British Columbia, we're in election period in Manitoba. I don't know if there's any other provinces, but I know at least the three of us are in the midst of it all right now. And so there is no better time to sort of talk about some of this stuff, because in fact, it is a time when people in our communities and Canadians in general are paying attention to these issues more than they do day in and day out, because as life goes on and everyone's busy between work and driving kids to sports and everything else that goes on in their lives, not to mention something small like the COVID pandemic, the last 2.5 years, it's been hard to remember that, climate change, the climate emergency, all of these issues are very much a reality. And so it's a great opportunity to talk about this in terms of the kinds of things that we've done and the kinds of things I've been involved in, our city's been involved in, and the kinds of things we're hearing from our residents around this stuff and how it's worked its way into my last 2 campaigns for mayor and continues to work its way into my current campaign as I seek my 3rd term as mayor. Prior to that, I actually did 20 years on city council. So when I did the Al Gore training, when I was FCM president, I was actually a city councillor and not the mayor at the time. So the city of Kitchener is the largest city in the region of Waterloo, and the region of Waterloo is the 10th largest urban census metropolitan area in the country. Population about 630,000 for the region, and for the city of Kitchener, it's around 270,000. And I think it's fair to say that as elected officials, we often find ourselves on the front lines playing a critical role when it comes to environmental protection and climate change advocacy. And with elections on the horizon in many of our cities, at least in those 3 provinces, it's a great time to learn about candidates in our local elections and to research their priorities, but particularly on climate change and the issues around sustainability faced by municipalities. For the city of Kitchener, climate action really means 3 things: reducing greenhouse gas emissions generated by our municipal operations, promoting sustainability in the broader community, and preparing Kitchener for the impacts of climate change going forward. In recent years, the city has begun to actively embed the UN SDGs into its governance model to achieve key strategic goals of climate action, active transportation, and economic development effectively and efficiently, all with an equity, diversity, and affordability lens. We walk the talk and are working to make this process even more embedded at the city as we go forward. A few years ago, the city began to localize the SDGs through detailed mapping, knowledge building, and establishing process tools, communication, and engagement structures for accountability. And in fact, here you actually see our province's Lieutenant Governor, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, who used to be the former, not sure title was director or deputy secretary general for UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program. Anyway, this was the 2 of us. The last time I've been at the UN since, but the last time I was there during Global Goals Week in September of 2019, because of course it hasn't happened again until this year when the Prime Minister and others are there right now. But the work that we've been undertaking really assists the city in approaching social, environmental, and economic issues holistically, given they're interdependent by nature. And this sort of thinking really progresses towards adaptive, responsive governance that helps address the climate crisis, recovery from economic and health crises in a socially just way. I think one of the key lessons that we've learned both from our history and the SDGs is that municipal government can only succeed when it works in true partnership with the entire community. And so from collaboration with private businesses to partnership initiatives with community organizations, our post-secondary institutions and other orders of government, through these mechanisms, we'll continue to work with these partners to ensure that Kitchener's growth and success continues to be enabled. So when it comes to talk of declaration of a climate emergency, this is not something that's new to all of you. Locally, federally, and globally, we've all been following the changing discussion about climate change and the climate crisis. And we've come to understand that if we don't take action, we can't expect others to. And as a result, back in 2019, Kitchener City Council unanimously voted to declare a climate emergency and take a leadership position in becoming a more sustainable city. By making this declaration, we joined over 400 other Canadian municipalities in highlighting the urgent need for strong action in addressing the threat posed by climate change. And when I say this was unanimous, a unanimous vote, it's not surprising because this is an issue that continues to, have significant prominence amongst electorate, both in federal, provincial, and local elections. And certainly we've seen that as a city. The declaration was an important signal that addressing climate change is a priority for us as a city, and was made as we established a detailed plan of action through our first generation corporate climate action plan to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions generated by our city operations. In terms of that corporate climate action plan, I think we all know that municipal governments play a key role in safeguarding local environmental quality, building resiliency, and protecting residents from significant climate change events. In Canada, municipalities have influence of roughly 50% of GHG emissions. And by adopting practices that reduce, remove, or avoid GHG emissions, and pursuing meaningful ways to adapt to climate change realities, municipalities can improve their residents' quality of life while saving money in operating costs. At the City of Kitchener, our first generation corporate climate action plan was created to respond to both climate adaptation and mitigation, and supported 9 of the 7 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. With the implementation of the plan, we surpassed our initial GHG target ahead of schedule and are now embarking on the next generation of our corporate climate action plan. In addition to the actions and goals outlined in that plan, we've also been striving to do more for our environment. In fact, in 2019, Council approved the Energy Retrofit Reserve Fund. This revolving fund was approved to fund capital projects, with the operating savings being reinvested into future efficiency projects within the city. In 2021, the city was successful in securing funding for EV charging through the Natural Resources Canada Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or ZEVEP. The implementation of electric vehicle charging stations is an important step, not just for us, but for all cities, in reducing GHGs and innovating our city fleets through technology, alternative fuels, and electrification. It's kind of fun to be able to say ZVIP, because normally as Canadians, we always say Z. So it's a little bit fun that way. The City of Kitchener has always had an environmental focus, which can be seen in a number of other decisions and projects we have undertaken over the years. As an example, when the Kitchener Operations Facility was built, a 500 kilowatt hour solar photovoltaic array was installed on the roof of the facility. We were pleased to see a much shorter payback time frame than was originally intended. In fact, we saw a 5-year payback and now generate nearly $400,000 annually worth of electricity being fed into the grid, and those dollars being paid to the municipality. We've also converted, whoops, that's a little too soon, sorry. We've also converted to smart LED streetlights, saving $1.2 million per year for a payback period of just 5 years, and resulting in the reduction of 160 tons of CO2 equivalent annually. We're continuing that conversion now on over 2,600 ornamental post-top lights to LED, and this conversion will result in a 62% energy savings reduction in annual savings of roughly 887,000 kilowatts and slightly less than $200,000. We've also diverted well over 635 tons of waste from going to landfill, including 3,400 LED light bulbs, over 1.1 million pounds of e-waste, scrap metal, and cast iron, over 14 tons of wood. 635 tons is equivalent to the weight of over 50 yellow school buses, something we can all relate to as the school year begins. Council has also approved an anti-idling bylaw to limit vehicle idling to no more than 3 consecutive minutes unless in traffic. And our Kitchener Operations Facility has a rainwater harvesting roof that has saved 15,000 cubic meters of water since 2018. And now firefighters are actually practicing using fire hoses on that building. The roof actually captures water, saving 6.8 million liters per training session, which is huge. So as you can see, as a city, we're always looking for new innovative ways to reduce our carbon footprint and create a sustainable model for our facilities and operations. Whoops. There we go. So one of the things that the city does every 4 years, and we've done it, I think, for 3 successive cycles, maybe even 4 now, is in the 3rd year of council, we actually hire Environics and do a survey of our residents to see, and get an accurate representative sample of where residents are sitting on various municipal issues and city priorities, including sustainability, homelessness, the economy, and arts and culture. And as we make important decisions on the future of our city, these insights are extremely valuable to help shape our path forward so we can build a top-notch city that is innovative, caring, and vibrant. And I share this because the timing of this actually always happens in the 4th year of a municipal term. And the intent behind it is actually to share that information, and it's been shared publicly, so that we can update our strategic plan, a process that starts in the 4th year of a term of council, but also that candidates can run and speak to these issues in an informed way at election time. So they understand in a statistically significant way where residents are sitting on certain issues. And so as we look at the results of our latest survey, one of the most eye-catching results was that over half of Kitchener residents agree that it's important to use more of the city's budget to address climate change, roughly 59%. Views on the most important sustainability considerations, however, are met with split opinions from residents. Just over 1/4 say the city should focus on sustainable development, while the same proportion say it should work to protect natural resources and agriculture. What I will say is really interesting for me out of this last survey, and I will point out that this survey was done before interest rates started going up, before we saw, the high levels of inflation we're seeing. So I suspect if we did it today, we would probably see a little bit of softening in these numbers. But it was really the first time when we saw a desire to see more of the city budget actually being used to address these issues. In the past, the environment and climate change was usually number 1 or number 2 in terms of municipal priorities. But when it came to actually spending municipal dollars on it, it dropped significantly. And so this is a change that we noticed this year in terms of that Environics survey. So additionally, I think over half of Kitchener residents agree it's important to use more of the city's budget to address climate change. Well, about 1/5 are on the fence, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. The results, as I said, will guide the development of our 2023 to 26 strategic plan, which is the next 4-year plan. But that plan is actually the first 4 years of our next 20-year strategic plan. So we've just finished our current 20-year one and are in the process of developing the next 20-year one and the first 4 years of it, through an inclusive public engagement process that we're engaging with right now. So I was a little late there in my slides, but you can see where the focus, 27% is on sustainable development, 27% were on protecting natural resources and agriculture. And some of that, I think, may have been because at the region, at the time, we were in the process of updating our official plan, and there was a lot of talk about a hard countryside line and growing up instead of out and so on. So I think some of that may have shaped some of these results. And we do see this every 4 years as we do these surveys, that the issues at the time, I think 4 years ago, there was, one of the Senate expense so-called scandals or whatever that occurred. And so we saw, transparency and accountability bump up in the responses as an example. So let me talk a little bit about Sustainable Waterloo Region, Climate Action, and Transform Waterloo Region. The work that the city has done to address climate change has not been done alone. We've worked together with local community groups, the 7 lower tier municipalities, as well as our regional government. and most importantly, concerned citizens to ensure that we create policies and plans that will meet the needs of both our residents and businesses alike. The Transform Waterloo Region strategy, which is our community-wide response to the global climate crisis, was developed through the Climate Action Waterloo Region Collaborative, led by NGOs, Reap Green Solutions and Sustainable Waterloo Region, which some of you might be familiar with, and funded both by the region and the 3 urban centers within the region. The strategy contains 6 transformative changes that act as a roadmap to transition Waterloo Region to a low-carbon community. And these changes are supported by 78 actions along with key milestones to help track progress. The Kitchener is responsible as lead, co-lead, collaborator, supporter, or participant for 50 of these actions. In addition to the changes, the strategy outlines our short-term and long-term strategies to achieve an 80% local GHG reduction target based on 2010 levels, and identifies local action needed to reduce our emissions by 50% by the year 2030. Currently, Climate Action Waterloo Region is drafting a new plan with the region, area municipalities, and townships to achieve that target. Much of the work that we're doing at the city is closely linked to the Paris Agreement, which, as you all know, I don't need to tell anyone on this call, in 2015 saw 196 parties around the world agree to the terms of the agreement. I was fortunate enough to be in attendance at the climate change conference in Paris. That the picture on the right, as you see, is many of the world's mayors who were part of that meeting. Mayor Tory from Toronto was there. Mayor Robertson from Vancouver at the time was there, and the former mayor of Montreal was there as well. The international agreement, as you know, outlines a long-term goal to limit average global temperatures below 2 degrees centigrade, with a target of 1.5 degrees centigrade compared to pre-industrial levels. The Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change is our country's approach to fulfilling this agreement. And at the provincial level, the Made in Ontario Environment Plan aims for a 30% GHG reduction by 2030, taking it below 2005 levels. To do our part locally, Waterloo Region is committed to our 80 by 50 target through the Transform Waterloo Region strategy, our transition to an equitable, prosperous, resilient, low carbon community. And we know that we have to take bold and immediate action to ensure that we're doing everything we can locally to exceed these targets and do our part in achieving the Paris Agreement objectives. By the way, the folks in the top left picture, besides myself and Mayor Tory from Toronto, included Raymond Louis from Vancouver, who's the former vice chair of Metro Van, a councillor in Vancouver, and a past president of FCM. Whoops, what happened there? There we go. On the left is Jenny Gerbasi, who's a former Winnipeg councillor and past president of FCM, and then the late Pam McConnell from Toronto on the right, who many of us miss dearly in a lot of our municipal work. Now, one of the really exciting things in the city of Kitchener is we are opening an SDG hub, an incubator for small businesses built on the SDGs. And so we're going to be looking at sustainability focused businesses as well as social enterprises that will help support and uplift women-led businesses, Indigenous-led businesses, and businesses led by our African, Caribbean, and Black communities, as well as Canadians. Through the hub, we're seeking new and innovative ways to incorporate and implement the SDGs into our work, not just as a city, but also as a community. And to this end, the hub will be a place where difference makers in our community are driven to lead and change things locally, nationally, and globally through intersection and collaboration with each other. The first of its kind, this social entrepreneurship hub in Waterloo Region, and maybe in Canada, will be located in the heart of downtown Kitchener, and will be a space for entrepreneurs and startups focused on social and environmental innovation and solving local and global issues. The space will welcome a variety of social and environmental entrepreneurs, including underrepresented groups and equity-deserving entrepreneurs. And will really encourage leaders to ideate, innovate, and apply the UN's global goals in a way that not only builds a stronger Kitchener, but a stronger province, a stronger country, and a stronger planet. So work has begun, or is actually in the process of beginning, to refresh the space, and we hope to see it operational by early in the new year. You know, at a future meeting, I'll be glad to maybe share some more information on the hub as we go forward. Whoops. In addition to the hub, beginning tonight, we're actually launching the first of a multi-part SDG speaker series. We're intentionally doing it during UN Global Goals Week, which will host, and it's hosting its inaugural event this evening. The series will focus on the contributions of entrepreneurship to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Goal targets. And the theme of the series is business as a force for good. So, you know, what's next going forward? In addition to the work being done on the hub, we continue to reaffirm our commitment to accountability and localization of the SDGs. As we know, there's always more work to be done to ensure that as a city, we are created in a way that is both sustainable and protects the environment for future generations. We're looking to launch an interactive online dashboard to showcase progress on sustainability and SDGs in the future, developing an updated open spaces strategic plan to plan for the future of Kitchener's parks and natural spaces with an equity-focused lens, establishing new energy, waste, and water targets with our regional sustainability initiative, and investing in flood resiliency and climate adaptation through our stormwater market incentive program. I think, you know, as all of you are aware, the impacts of climate change are already evident in Canada and around the world, and municipalities are on the front lines of this work. And so as a local government leader, I certainly look forward to continuing to champion this work in my own community. As I said, it's been part of my platforms in the past as we look to building a better Kitchener, and will continue to be going forward. I've been involved with the SDGs since their inception at the UN back in 2015, when we were passionately arguing for Goal 11 to be included in the SDGs and in a role for local government. And I will, you know, look forward to continuing that work going forward. I mean, quite frankly, if I wasn't in the middle of an election, I'd be down in New York right now this week. You know, that's obviously doing this work in our cities, nationally and internationally. It's important that we never forget that our first priority is in public service to our communities. And I kind of remiss that I have to use a US quote in this regard. But some of you, those of you who are more my vintage, will remember a former speaker of the House of the US Congress, and that was Tip O'Neill. And he one of his famous quotes was that all politics is local, and it's so true. And so whether or not we're dealing with climate change locally, or whether or not we're applying that work, you know, provincially, nationally, internationally, at the end of the day, it starts in our cities, and even more so, it starts in our neighborhoods and in each of our individual homes and businesses. And so in this regard, I really want to thank the Climate Reality Project Canada for all of your leadership over the years in this important work, for your advocacy work with different orders of government, and also for providing a space where local government leaders can come and develop their skill sets, so we can continue to move these important agenda items forward. So that, Hope, would be my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Mayor Vrbanovic, everyone. That was fantastic. I open the floor. We'll kind of give, how much time are you able to give? I'm happy to go with what you are able to do.
I think I'm blocked till 6. So
oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, then, and if anyone has any sort of questions, then raise your hands, and we'll kind of have a bit of a discussion all together.
By the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out my SDG. I don't know if it's a volleyball or a soccer ball, but it's awesome. I picked it up at the bookstore at the UN, I think in 2019. Yeah, if you're actually looking for some great SDG, stuff for your work, the bookstore actually has a website, and you can order stuff directly from them, whether it's tins, notebooks, water bottles, volleyballs, whatever the case is.
Amazing. Yeah, okay. I mean, thank you again for shouting out Climate Reality Project Canada. I know I'm slightly new here still. I started in May, but definitely in my short time here, I've really enjoyed working with municipalities and kind of shedding a bit of a focus on them. So it's been really big pleasure being able to invite you here and have this space. So I'm seeing the first question that came in. It was from the chat from Kat. So Kat says, "Thank you, Mayor. Comprehensive. Is there any tool in Canada that assigns how much of a Canadian tax dollar comes from oil, gas, coal production?"
So great question, Kat. I'm not familiar of that. I mean, I know from time to time we've all seen stickers, and I guess they've generally been generated by the oil companies that show how much is their refining costs versus and their profits versus how much goes to provincial and federal governments. But I'm not aware of a tool that actually does that. But there probably if you go to Dr. Google, you might find something.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. So appreciated your run through.
Thanks, Kat.
Amazing. Jana, I think you were next.
Okay, so Mayor Berry,
Yeah. Call me Barry, by the way. I'm so
Barry.
not formal.
Okay, Berry, the Corporate Climate Action Plan. If I understood correctly, you are basically working on the next 4 years. That's part of a 20-year plan. So the next 20-year plan overall. Can you kind of explain the relationship between the Corporate Climate Action Plan and the municipality's official plan, and whether the Climate Action Plan needs to be approved by the province in any way? Because the official plans do need the formal sign-off by the province, and I'm just wondering where the climate action plans.
Yeah, so maybe to bring some clarity to it, the Corporate Climate Action Plan is really focused around the things that we can do as a city to positively impact GHG reduction. So what can we do in terms of our fleet? What can we do in terms of energy management in our facilities? What kind of investments can we make to help support some of this work, and so on. So it's really taking an inward-looking approach, as any institution or company might, as they look, or even as individuals might, as we look to how can we play a role in all of this. The official plan is obviously more a planning document that looks at how the city grows, and so that is separate. So going back to your question, that first plan, the Corporate Climate Action Plan, does not require any provincial adaptation. It's approved by council and monitored by council going forward. The official plan, as you noted, does require provincial approval. And there's, of course, a municipal official plan and a regional one, because we're in a two-tier structure here. It's kind of like Ottawa was back when it was Ottawa Carleton, before the amalgamation happened. And it's there that we get into some of the debate and conversations, and did throughout the summer, as we finalized ours in August, around things like the hard countryside line and 15-minute neighborhoods, and seeing us intensify and grow up as opposed to going forward. And then beyond those two, there's obviously the community climate action plan that I referenced, or Transform Waterloo Region, which is really the the work that's being done, led by REAP and Sustainability Waterloo Region, along with community partners, to meet our collective as a region, small R region, objectives around GHG reduction. So what's the role of municipalities, of post-secondary institutions, of the hospitals, of the private sector, of individuals, businesses, and so on. It takes a very comprehensive collective community approach.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura, go ahead.
Yes, really inspiring work that's going on there in Kitchener. And my question is a little bit about the sort of the social norms of how, the ambitious climate. Being from British Columbia, I'm outside the area, so I'm not real familiar with maybe what is unique about your area that you're leading on, and also, like, for example, in BC, it's become very, very mainstream because of our
Sorry, Laura,
accelerating.
you're cutting out a little bit. If you can maybe just be near the mic.
Sorry. I decided to be outside on this gorgeous day, so my internet might not be as strong here. Yes, I was just going to say in British Columbia here in the interior, there's also a lot more concern about climate change more recently because of the accelerating impacts like smoke and wildfires and so on. So I'm just curious what kind of drives this action there in your area?
So I guess, we certainly haven't been experiencing some of those, more dramatic things like your part of the country has, Laura. What I would say to you, where we've seen it, we've seen more in terms of major storm events in the summer months, with huge amounts of rainfall causing flooding, where we've seen damage because of large windstorms and so on. Those kinds of things have certainly brought it to the forefront in a bit of a meaningful way for people. But I think the rest of it really just comes out of an awareness of what's happening in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, and recognizing that we need to be part of that solution. And not everyone's obviously there, and people are at different points on the spectrum. But as I think you saw in that Environics survey, I was pleasantly surprised, particularly coming out of a pandemic, that was one of the things that the community said they'd like to see. And again, I emphasize it was before the current, interest rate hikes and inflation over the last number of months. But seeing that kind of response from the community saying, we want you to invest more in these areas, was clearly the collective work and messaging has been working. And that's why I think, going back to really the topic of today, which is how does all this link in with our municipal elections in particular? I think it's really important that we continue to talk about this stuff and continue to make it a priority in our for those who are running or those who are helping others run in our campaigns.
Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, I'm really focused on the elections. I love hearing about all the good things you've done, and we need to get the people in there who are going to do it. I work with a couple of different nonprofit groups, and one of the groups I work with is has solicited questions for candidates from the community and will be publishing their answers verbatim on the issues and the climate crisis and environment and forestry. I'm in BC. It are all top of mind in terms of the responses we got from people. And we have a regional district and 4 municipalities. And in that, there's quite a wide range of the political spectrum, and the developer as part of the community is noticing that people care more about climate change and pushing hard in the opposite direction. So in that context, any advice about what nonprofits who are working on environmental issues and community building can do when we're not endorsing candidates?
So, I think obviously continuing to keep these issues at the forefront is important. What I will tell you, and I've been in local government for 28 years now, is I have found, at least in my own community, and different places are different, but taking balanced, reasonable approaches in your advocacy work and bringing people along is the most effective way to bring about change. It may not always be or feel like it's the fastest way. And I know there's folks that certainly would advocate more dramatic action at times, but I have found at least that does not bring about the ultimate end result that you're looking for, because you always need to push people. This is sort of my analogy of social change. You need to push people to the edge of their comfort level, but not so much that you take them over that edge. By pushing them to the edge of that comfort level, you will bring about change. If you push them over that edge, you may actually get to a point where you get the opposite reaction. And then to try to actually regain that trust and to be able to again take the next step becomes much more complex. The difficulty is it's hard to know where that line is, right? And it's something that you have to develop. It takes patience, it takes a feel, and it takes a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, so it's essentially the same strategy we've been doing, just carry on.
I can't speak specifically to your group, Jane, or to your set of groups that have been driving this on the island. What I will tell you is, I think we all can think of groups or organizations, or maybe we're even part of some that push those envelopes a little more significantly, and sometimes it's worked, but often it hasn't. So it's finding that balance, right?
Yeah, and we are in terms of the climate crisis, quite the time crunch. What occurs to me is that just as the candidates are out door knocking, it might be good for us to be having one-on-one conversations, door knocking, again, which we have done in past elections, just to get out the vote without endorsing candidates, because people have different edges.
Yeah,
so
no, for sure.
Finding those one-on-one edges might be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add, Jane, is for many of our groups, the real work that needs to be done is the work that we do at building this support between elections. It's a little harder to do it in the midst of an election because there's so many competing issues that different groups are trying to move to the top of the agenda. And so you need to have done a lot of that work. And that's where I think, quite frankly, the work that Climate Reality project has done in terms of, building that gradually across the country over time has been the most successful.
Yeah, well, we've been at it for 10 years, so hopefully we've done that work too.
Definitely. Janet, last question maybe, and then we'll kind of do a bit of a wrap up afterwards.
So I was going to pick up on the public engagement process, but Barry, you shared with us your, your vision, your mantra for social change, which is to push people to the edge of their comfort level, and yet not so much. They feel that edge, but there. So I can't help but ask the question, can you describe a time or tell us about a time, in Kitchener, in working with, the public and working with groups? It could be during a municipal election, it could have been before or after, where you sense that and that you were at the edge on climate. What was that like for you?
So I won't speak to it on climate, but I'll speak to it on a project that hit the community, or that the community was debating. This was back when I was a councillor still. And because the community wasn't there yet, a really great vision and idea ended up being lost. So there was a number of aquatic groups that came together. So there was an old, let's step back just for a second. There was an old rubber site in town, BF Goodrich, contaminated land. The company was, basically sold it to an unnumbered company who was willing, like they were going to give it back to the city clean and give the land to the city for a community purpose. BF Goodrich was, or their numbered companies. And so there was a number of aquatic community groups that came together wanting to actually build a major swim training facility there that would have met the needs of our community, but also provincially and nationally in some respects. Really great vision, did the number crunching, it looked realistic and so on. But what they didn't do along the way was they didn't, beyond their swimming community, they didn't build broad community support for it. And the great vision, the great business plan, all of that failed because there wasn't community support. The media came out against it, and at the end of the day, council could not see their way to supporting the project, and it died. Now, over time, we created a different vision for the site. It's become a health sciences campus together with University of Waterloo. We had Ontario's second school of pharmacy built there. We've got a satellite med school there now, and we're doing other really cool stuff. So other good ideas have come for it. But my point was, that was an example where, we pushed the community, but they were kind of being pushed too far too quickly before they were ready on that issue. One of the best examples I'll give of social change, and this goes back historically and kind of in some ways comes from our community, because we were the first blue box community. It's really how social change happened around recycling. And if you think about it, the way that social change happened was through kids and teaching kids about the right things to do. And the same is somewhat true in terms of climate change, I think. Right? It was little Jane or little Bob who saw mom or dad throwing the empty jar or the can in the garbage and said, like, hey, what the heck are you doing? Right? We got to recycle. We got to do our part. Right? And that program developed over a number of years, brought about probably one of the most significant, social changes, particularly for those of us who are, more my vintage that are on the call versus Hope's vintage, who remember that and remember when we didn't have recycling, and then all of a sudden how that developed over time, right? But that was keeping those campaigns happening, getting people aware. Some people, weren't comfortable with it or thought it was a waste of energy and effort, but we were able to get things to where we needed to get them.
So I'm wondering if one day we will see Kitchener featured with the International Association of Public Participation on your public engagement process, because I know that there is at least one Canadian city who has won an award. And so, for us leaving here, what would you give us as a takeaway, thinking about Kitchener and your public engagement process? What inspires people most about it?
So we've been really working hard on a number of areas, making it easier for people, through online engagement and so on. We're seeing engagement levels have gone up significantly. We've seen engagement levels go up in terms of participation in council meetings or even planning meetings and so on, since we've been able to go virtual, and we've kept a commitment to continue that going forward, because we know, for example, particularly for young families, or older adults and so on, nobody in the winter wants to necessarily come out, or few people do, to a public meeting if they can, participate and be engaged from the comfort of their own home. So we will continue with hybrid for some of those things going forward. We've also done some really cool stuff, particularly when we were working on our neighborhood strategies and so on. Simple things like creating neighborhood lemonade stands during special events and so on, and using those as an opportunity to engage with community and to target where those lemonade stands would go to groups that traditionally would be underrepresented in terms of our engagement. So we're putting a lot more focus now on taking an equity focused approach in terms of our engagement on issues.
That's really, really amazing. So we are just about at time.
Thanks, Kat. Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much for all of the engagement in the chat. And thank you all for coming here today and hearing Berry speak. Thank you, Berry, again. Your insights are just illuminating and really inspiring. And I hope everyone has kind of felt a bit of a renewed push towards whatever work you're doing in your own local municipalities in your upcoming elections. So I'll let you all have your evenings. And I'm going to stop the recording now so that I don't forget about that.